My name is Logan Peters, and my first object is a pair of keys. In the 1950s, American automobile culture has had an enduring influence on the culture of the United States, as reflected in popular music, major trends from the 1950s, and mainstream acceptance of the hot rod culture. The American manufacturing economy switched from producing war-related items to consumer goods at the end of World War II, and by the end of the 1950s, 1 in 6 working Americans were employed either directly or indirectly in the automotive industry. The United States became the world's largest manufacturer of automobiles, and Henry Ford's goal of 40 years earlier, that any man with a good job should be able to afford an automobile, was achieved. A new generation of service businesses focusing on consumers with their automobiles sprang up during the decade, including drive-through or drive-in restaurants and more drive-in theaters. For my second object, I have a leather jacket. The leather jacket represents Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was born in 1935 and he died in 1977, and he was born to a poor family in Mississippi. When he was a teenager, the Presleys moved to Memphis, where Elvis graduated from high school and took a job as a truck driver. Through his teen years, though he could not read sheet music, he played guitar and sang country and hillbilly tunes. He loved music but was entirely self-taught. Elvis began attracting attention with his music in 1954 when he was 19. He infused black rhythm and blues songs with his distinctive style, which came to include dance moves that were considered quite sexually suggestive for the time. In 1956, Heartbreak Hotel became his first #1 hit, and Elvis suddenly became a national sensation. Crowds of screaming teenagers packed his shows. At the end of 1957, Elvis received his draft notice, serving as an ordinary GI in the U.S. military until 1960. Elvis was also yielding a strong influence on youth culture. During the 1950s, teenagers had begun to think of themselves as being different from their parents' generation. Because of the economic prosperity of the period, teens enjoyed a disposable income that they could spend on themselves instead of contributing toward family survival. With that money, they dressed themselves in fashions marketed to their age group, went to movies that featured stars of their generation, and listened to music that appealed to them. So it wasn't a surprise when Presley's rock and roll music, his hairstyle, and his fashion sense became a part of this new culture for teenagers. For my third object, I have birth control pills. American women in the 1950s got married at very young ages. Many of the women that got married before their 19th birthday got pregnant 7 months after their weddings. The new parents of the post-war era did not stop at 1 child or even 2. So because of that, between 1940 and 1960, birth rate doubled for the third children and quadrupled for fourth children. Mostly everybody used birth control except for the Roman Catholics, who were against it. Americans were the ones who didn't have a problem with it. Families also didn't approve if the women were having premarital sex. Women didn't care and still did what they wanted. These women faced disapproval from their family and unwanted pregnancy. Women taking these actions used different ways of birth control. For example, one way was obviously the condom that you could buy at the drugstore. 3 other ways were withdrawal, douching, and rhythm to make sure they didn't become pregnant. In the should we just stop?
Hi, my name is Daniella Hoyos, and in today's 1950s treasure chest, we'll find the first credit card used. In 1949, Fred's ex-McNamara thought of a way for customers to use just one credit card at multiple stores. McNamara discussed the idea with 2 colleagues, and the 3 pulled some money and started a new company in 1950, which they called the Diners Club. The first Diners Club credit cards were given out in 1950 to 200 people and accepted by 14 restaurants in New York. The concept of the card grew, and by the end of 1950, 20,000 people were using the Diners credit card. The Diners Club credit card is considered the first modern credit card. The second item in the 1950s treasure chest is the automatic clock. In 1955, Louis Easton, assisted by Jack Perry at the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, built the first automatic clock to outperform existing pendulum and quartz clocks. Rival mechanical clocks work by counting the vibrations of something which has a constant frequency, such as a pendulum. This was invented to be able to tell time more quickly and efficiently. People who could not read off of a regular watch now had the ability to tell the time. Third object in a 1950s treasure chest are 3D glasses. The stereoscopic era of motion pictures began in the late 1890s when British film pioneer William Friese-Greene filed a patent for a 3D movie process. The viewers looked through a stereoscope to converge the two images. Because of the mechanics behind this method, theoretical use was not practical. The camera had two lenses coupled together, 1 inch apart. The 3D craze all started in 1952 in the United States with Arch Obler's 1952 Bowana Devil. Although it never really became a theoretical standard, it also had never completely disappeared. Bowana Devil hit the big towns with ballyhoo posters showing lions leaping out of the screen and promising an experience that wasn't just a movie, but practically reality. Life magazine carried surreal photos of hundreds of viewers laughing and cringing, all wearing similar 3D glasses that looked like sunglasses.
Hi, my name is Maliaka and I'm your news reporter for today. Today we found an amazing treasure chest filled with 1950s popular items. Out of all of these items, one of the items I found is Play-Doh. Play-Doh is one of those revolutionary toys with surprisingly mundane roots. In the early 1950s, Joe McVicker sent some solid mashable wallpaper cleaner to a classroom after learning that children often found kids and clay too difficult to handle. It was a smash with the kids, and McVicker graciously offered to send shipments to all Cincinnati schools. It didn't take long to realize that the substance had more potential as a toy than as a cleaning product. We've since played with more than 700 million pounds of the Play-Doh. By 1956, Play-Doh had its oddly spelled name, and stores like Macy's and Marshall Fields took notice. Colorful versions of it soon followed. Later, iterations have included glitter and glow-in-the-dark dough, for those who need a little extra oomph in their goo. Recently, in a treasure chest I found from the 1950s, I found a color TV. On June 25th, 1951, CBS broadcasted the very first commercial color TV program. They did this to improve viewing ratings and to entertain their viewers. Unfortunately, nearly no one could watch it on their black and white televisions. The first color program was a variety of shows simply called Premiere. The show featured such celebrities as Ed Sullivan, Gary Moore, Faye Emerson, Arthur Godfrey, Sam Levinson, Robert Alda, and Isabel Bigley, many of whom hosted their own shows in the 1950s. The place where they hosted these shows was on a TV such as this. It had color. Premiere aired from 4:35 to 5:34 p.m., but only reached 4 cities. The 4 cities it reached was Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. Although the colors were not quite true to life, the first program was a success. 2 days later, on June 27, 1951, CBS began airing the first regularly scheduled color television series called The World Is Yours. This featured Ivan T. Sanderson, which he discussed artifacts and animals from his travels. The World Is Yours aired on weeknights from 4:30 to 5 o'clock p.m. Another object I found in this amazing treasure chest is a video recorder. Charles Ginsberg led the research team at Ampex Corporation in developing the first practical videotape recorder. In 1951, the first videotape recorder captured live images from television cameras by converting the information into electrical impulses and saving the information onto magnetic tape. Ampex sold the very first VTR for $50,000 in 1956. First US-made Ampex model 200 tape, which is what it was called when it was made in the 1950s, arrived for The Cosby Show number 27. The VCR revolutionized the movie industry. It changed television watching habits, triggered the first format wars, and raised new copyright questions, establishing jurisprudence on fair use. When television first took off in the 1950s, the only means of preserving video footage was through kinescope, a process in which a special motion picture camera photographed a television monitor. Because this camcorder has come into play, many people found it very useful, and it was to my pleasure that I found this camcorder in my treasure chest.
Hi, my name is Brittney, and I'm here to talk to you about the items I have found in the treasure chest. Here, I have found a cowboy hat. During the 1950s, cowboys were a main role in TV. This cowboy hat was from the most famous cowboy, Andy Devine. He starred in the TV series The Adventures of the Wild Bill Hickok. At this time, these films were mostly seen in black and white, until later they were seen in TV. In the second item of the treasure chest, I have found sock hop socks. In the 1950s, informal high school dances were often held as social meetings for the students. These dances were often held in the gym or cafeteria. The students would arrive and take off their shoes and dance in their socks to pop music played by a jukebox. Rock and roll music was also featured on occasion, most popularly Elvis Presley. The third and final item I have found in the treasure chest is a game of Yahtzee. Yahtzee was originally invented in 1954 by a Canadian couple who called it the yacht game, all because they played it on their yacht. 2 years later, they asked the game entrepreneur Edwin S. Lau if he would make up some sets to be given as gifts to their friends who enjoyed the game on the yacht. Lau perceived the possibility of marketing the game and acquired the rights to the game from the couple years later in exchange for 1,000 gift sets. Over the next 15 years, the game would go on to sell over 40 million sets worldwide.